We have the responsibility because that food is called condensed, and that makes us human, at least the form. So we are creation in the human form. That's a responsibility. And most people today ask them, who are you? They tell them the name. I don't believe it. Oh, here's my passport. That's all I am. But do you have any idea who you are? No, I just want to be happy. That's all. Yeah? And so it's dangerous to identify macrobiotics just by happiness. Because first of all, we have a responsibility. When we want to be happy, it's not only for ourselves. We have to be happy for the future, for our children, and so on. That's why Joro Sawa identified happiness. He said happiness is the endless realization of the infinite dream. So what is a dream? What can make us happy? Only for this life, as you die and it's over? No. We have to think about our legacy. What is our legacy that can make our future happy? That's a responsibility. So being creation in the human form, we have a divine responsibility. And so at times you have to be so-called unhappy in the form of difficulties. And most people don't want to have difficulties. They want to have so easy. But difficulty is important. It's extremely important. I see life as a cosmic onion. Okay? And our goal is to come to the center. It's not easy. In the beginning it's easy. You have the first peeling, it's okay, it's fun, you know. Second layer, third layer, and begin to cry. It's difficult. Right? And most people give up. And you know what? This cosmic onion that we've been peeling for many generations, many lifetimes, different worlds, very difficult. We have experienced torture, being burned alive, skinned alive, right? Realize it. And now we're coming to the last peeling to come to the center. It's an opportunity. We have a divine responsibility. Now, if macrobiotic is just to be happy for yourself, that's egotistical. That is not macrobiotic, it's micro, egotistical. Right? So we have to bring out the courage, it's the last test, and opportunity, right, to come to the center. So then we attain that. That is the happiness. That's the happiness. The reward is not on demand. I want to be happy now. I want to cure my cancer now. Please help me. Give me the best food. No, that's not macrobiotics. That's egotistical. Right? Macrobiotic is to reach the point where you can say, I am. Now, how many people can say that? They identify themselves by who they are not. That's not macrobiotics. And now, John Osawa, his goal was world government. And what does it mean, world government? Now, I want to talk more about that later on. But as far as food, they asked what is food, right? First, food is what we select. And we have to know how to select the food, by the seasons, by the climate, by your conditions, age, way of life, and so on. That's number one here. Right? Second is, they have to know how to prepare the food. Third, they have to know how to eat the food. What do you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? How do you combine it? And so on. The sequence of eating. That's an art. 3, once we eat food, we become food. Who's going to eat us? If we want to complete the cycle, we must ourselves very delicious, right, for the Creator, right, who's within us. That means we eat for ourselves within, not for your tongue, not for the taste, right? Because everything is all contained. We are creation in the human form. So the Creator is nowhere but here and everywhere, right? So therefore, that food had to be changed in consciousness. I just described this in the 9 steps. right, of how food is created and how food becomes conscious. So 9 steps down, 9 steps up. Right? So that's how I relate to food, the total cycle of food. Right? In order to come to the center within ourselves. Yeah.
Okay, Phya.
Yes.
Diabetes. Can you cure?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Change the camera.
Okay.
Roy, don't open more for...
¿No?
Que no se obre más a la derecha.
No, to the center.
Okay, a little.
Okay.
Fantastic. And do you have any time I used to ask? Okay.
Okay, Phya, and in your opinion, why is food so important?
That's a very good question. When we talk about food, the importance of food is because in the past it was not considered as important. So Macrobiotics introduced the idea that food is important because it is important. As I mentioned before my parents were teaching in the United States, food was only considered important in terms of calories and vitamins and nothing more. No one ever considered that food maybe changes the way you behave, the way you think, and even changes the problems like cancer or other health concerns. They thought maybe the sun is causing cancer or viruses are causing cancer. They never thought that food and what you eat is affecting you and causing these diseases, as well as causing how you think and how you behave. And so when you look at all these human efforts over history, that there have been many efforts to create world peace or world government or world take over the world or create a peaceful world. And those efforts included by force, certainly, but also by religion, by ideas, by philosophy, and now by science, and by many ways. And if you study all of those people who promoted those ideas, none of them really talked about food. You study Aristotle, you study Socrates, you study Jesus even. He mentioned some things about food, and in Jewish religion they talk about kosher laws, but nobody really talked about how food influences you and can change you, and the importance of it, even in Buddhism. So when Buddhism came, Osawa, the father of macrobiotics, he was critical about it because he didn't talk about food. They just brought about the idea and the religion. So he said, we need to introduce, if people are going to study Zen Buddhism, they need to study macrobiotics as well. Macrobiotics meaning how to change your own food. Another good example is this ancient Greek philosopher. His name was Epictetus, and he was a Greek slave who was well-known philosopher and well-quoted, and Osawa quoted him. He came up with the idea that if you are unhappy, it is your own fault, or also if the key to becoming happy is to stop worrying about the things you can't change. Okay, so there are things we can't change, like the sun and the stars and how the earth moves and all of these things, including we can't change other people. I can't change you as much as I'd like to, but we can change ourselves. Now, one of the things that Epictetus didn't include, he thought that we can't change our bodies. However, through George Osawa's experience of changing his eating and curing himself of tuberculosis, that he realized we can change our bodies, we can change our health, and we can change our physical health and physical bodies. So and we can do that by changing our food and changing what we take. So there are things that we can change that Epictetus and Buddhism and Jesus and all of these other things didn't really consider that we can change. And that is why the emphasis in macrobiotics today is about food. Everything else is very important. The sun, stars, and social interactions and all of these other things, they are extremely important. And they do influence us as much as our food. But to ignore food also is a big mistake that is missing from people who study those things. That's why today you have many spiritual leaders, gurus, even the Dalai Lama, who are getting sick because they're not paying attention to their food. They're not really understanding that, yes, they can change their bodies as well, that we can change our bodies. And so George Sao changed Epictetus's saying. Epictetus said, if you are unhappy, it is your own fault. George Sao said, if you are unhealthy, it is your own fault. So he added that part to it, meaning that it's your fault. By your choosing what you eat, changing your biology, you can change yourself. And that is your responsibility. That is what you have to do. And so then, in looking at all these movements to create one world and one peaceful world, Osawa and my parents, they call this the first biological revolution on Earth. First human biological revolution. We had other revolutions like the American Revolution and the other types of revolutions on the Earth, religious revolutions, but for the first time we are having a biological revolution, changing our biology, our body, our blood. And that is why food is so important today, especially today because the industry is taking over food, has taken over the food in the world, and has completely taken over with a complete ignorance or not thinking about how it is affecting human beings. And so we must, through our understanding and awareness, through thinking and consciousness, and of food and how it affects us, we must restart a new revolution.
And following what you're saying, what about the power of food to cure diseases, to cure health problems? What about diabetes, for example?
Well, my way of thinking. Okay. When somebody asks me a question of how and what, sometimes people don't like the way I come across. I'm not satisfied with giving an answer directly because I want to explain why. We have to come to the root cause. Okay? And as we come to the very root cause, there's no answer, there's no cure. Now there are three approaches to dealing with the disease. One is a symptom, one is causes, the many causes, and one's only one origin. Okay? And we have to come to that origin, very origin. Macrobiotics gives us the opportunity to come to that origin. So we shouldn't be satisfied by just curing a cancer because the tumor disappeared, I'm cured, I'm happy. No, that is wrong. When we get cancer, it is an indication that we were ignorant. Ignorance is the cancer. And that's why Joseph Sava called this school ignorance. We are ignorant. We have to come to the root cause. Now, what is macrobiotics doing for us to come to become less ignorant? Okay? It's like this. We can relate to opposites in two ways. Superficially, and deductive mindset from the outside to the inside, or inductive. Okay? Now, we have yin and yang. That means that those are the poles for us to be able to practice the law, change. Without polarity, you cannot have change. You cannot move. So you have yang, contraction, and yin. That's a very nature of opposites, and all phenomena is contraction, expansion, yang, yin. You can relate to these opposites two ways. This one, you eat salt, you need water. You eat meat, you need sugar. Okay? But you also can do this. Put it together and get control. Right? And that's macrobiotics for. Get control of yourself. Your body, your emotions, your mind, your way of life. Control. Now, humanity today is out of control. Obviously, in many ways. Even in the relationships, the body, the mind, emotions, and so on. Completely out of control. And how did it happen? Again, we have to understand why this is all happening. We cannot say, oh, these are the corrupt society, or corrupt leaders, or corrupt systems, Monsanto blaming, demonstrating. That's not the solution. And macrobiotics is not for that purpose. And why do you have so many diets today? Why so many diets? 100 years ago, you only had maybe 3 or 4 diets, and before that, no diet. Suddenly you have thousands of diets. Why? Okay. Now, I remember as a child, let's say 70 years ago, or 75 years ago, when somebody is sick in the family. They write a note, and somebody bring it to the doctor, and the doctor comes with his bag, with his black bag. Say, what is the problem? He said, not so serious. He said, okay, what did you eat? Right? How you been eating? It was questioning. And I said, okay, let me see your tongue, let me see your pulse, and made the recipe. Try this for 10 days, a diet. Okay? And if it still prevails, the problem, call me, I'll come back and see what can be done. First thing was, he gave a diet. Okay? But then it became illegal to give a diet. Doctors today, they lose their license when they give a diet instead of pills or operations, right? Why? And so, people are at a loss, there's no doctor who can have a diet, so I try my own diet. If somebody try diet, problem in hold, it gets better, I get cured because I create my own diet. Impress other people, so then becomes a diet. Right? Adele Davis diet, Atkins diet, you name it, many diets, Pavlov diet, many diets, right? So, but all these diets are experimental. Experimental. Yeah? And maybe they do all right for a while, but then how about a way of eating that is most conducive to the human race? Nobody thinks about it. Only want to feel good. They want to look good. Oh, this diet. Or even macrobiotics. This is a good diet. I can lose my weight. It's not the purpose. It's not the purpose of macrobiotics. Okay. So what is the purpose of macrobiotics? Not only that. Why was the need created for having macrobiotics? Why? And why do you have so many diseases? They have to go all the way back, right? Where today disease has become a system, has become a business, has become a control point. And today's established has got one cure for one problem, not even a headache, not even that. And it's forbidden to cure today. And why did it happen? How did it happen? How far can we go back in history? Now, unless we do that, we don't understand macrobiotics, really. We only understand it as a way to become happy and healthy. But why did it happen? How did it happen? They had to go all the way back. Now, and this is fact, it's history, right? 1300, 1200, there was an inquisition. Inquisition. And people say, oh, it's a long time ago. Yeah. Has the Inquisition stopped? And why did we have the Inquisition? What was the target of the Inquisition? Who were the ones who were most targeted by the Inquisition? The women. And why women? Because you control the food. You control the food, you control the blood. You control the blood, you control everything. Thinking, way of life, everything. Now the kitchen at the time was the center of government. It was the first church, a temple. It was the first hospital, laboratory for the alchemists, school, and the bank. Every home had their own bank. That was the wholesale grain, that was the original money. Now that was forbidden. Right? Today, very obviously, right, all these aspects of the kitchen has become institutionalized. And it's forbidden to have your own kitchen, your own school. Children are forbidden, right, to be schooled at home, and so on, and so on. Instead of alchemy, which was the science of the day, we have chemistry today. And all the diets today are based on chemistry, not alchemy. Only macrobiotics. Change is alchemy. So we have two systems and two ways of relating to food. This way, opposites are conflicting. Why? Because it lacks the center. And this way, where the opposites have a center. This is alchemy. This is chemistry. This is deductive. This is inductive. Macrobiotics is supposed to help humanity to change the deductive into the inductive. And this also has been encoded in the symbol of the heart. And everyone knows this symbol. 1 becoming 2, right? The polarization is the beginning of creation, and 2 becoming 1. And how do we come back to the oneness with consciousness? By memory. And where do you get the memory from? From food. So macrobiotics is not just food. Specific food. Specific way of eating. Specific way of preparation. To release the memory so you can remember. For that reason, right, we have been given yin and yang to come to that center, to reconstruct, to restore the quality of the complex human cell. And how do you create a complex cell? A complex cell, the human, you need the memory, right? Like the center of the earth, the center. Without a memory, this cell decomposes and becomes simple cells, like bacteria, decompose, become virus, decompose, become radiation. And that's happening today because it's cancer. So to reconstruct and to actually to become really human, you need to have the complex human cell. And to have that complex human cell, you need the 5 elements. The 5 elements, that means the complete cycle, is maintained by the 5 transition stages. Is air, heaven, as you have, the earth, the essence is sea salt. To connect heaven with earth is water. To connect earth with heaven is fire. And to unite them all is the whole grain. Without these 5, you cannot be human. No way. And so what's happening today? They disconnect from the heavens, like chemtrails, internet. People don't eat the sea salt or proper salt or the proper use of it. The water is polluted with fluoride. People change fire with electricity, microwave, and no grain. So how can you be human? How can you be human? Not possible. You can look human. You can behave like a human, but you're not human. To contain the human race, you need a complex human cell. Period. That's macrobiotics. So we cannot say, oh, I can eat everything. Yeah, I can. But definitely not Coca-Cola.
Okay.
That's not food. Okay? You agree? Right?
Yeah.
You agree.
If
If you eat meat, okay, eat meat. But not non-food. Non-food. You eat food, but not non-food. We have to emphasize. But macrobiotic is to come to the center, to point zero, you have control. And without control, you deserve sickness for the purpose to become conscious. Now, to come to the point, if you really want to be free of any disease, any mishap, even accidents, right? You have to be in the now. In the now, disease is not possible. Not possible. Only when we do this. When we lose control, this is disease. Yeah? Young disease, young disease. But in the now, disease is not possible. And in the now, we realize who we are. That's called self-realization. The goal of macrobiotics is self-realization, to be in the now, to be free, to be in bliss, really. This is self-realization, this, not this. See?
Okay. Yeah, and a more practical advice for people who have diabetes,
Yes.
for example.
Well, to understand how to address all health issues, what's important is to understand the difference between constitution and condition. The things you can't change and things you can change. So, for example, what we are born with is our constitution, and what we do with what we have, and including our day-to-day eating, that's our condition. So our condition we can change every day, and it changes every day based on what is going on in our lives. So with diabetes, for example, there are two types of diabetes. There's diabetes 1 and diabetes 2. Diabetes 1 is based more on your constitution. People are born with that kind of diabetes, and they have to live with that condition for the rest of their lives. However, diabetes 2 is a condition that comes on through lifestyle and through what you eat, and that can be changed easily simply by changing what you eat. People who ate a lot of sugar and a lot of dairy foods and other things that where that influences the pancreas and their insulin and their blood sugar. As soon as they eat more simple grains, whole grains and vegetables, and change their diet and stop eating these highly processed foods and heavy animal foods, they immediately can get better. This is diabetes type 2. Diabetes type 1, they can improve. They can get better themselves, but they still sometimes must rely on insulin injections and other things like that because it's a constitutional problem that they were born with. But you can also look at it from a larger perspective, like why are people born with that kind of problem? Why do these birth defects come about? And that is another question which looks at longer periods of time, like what were the parents eating at the time of birth? What was the mother eating while the baby was in the womb? And what were your parents eating in that whole process? So over a longer period of time, over generations, if there's a consistently degeneration of the way people are eating, then more and more babies are born in weaker conditions. They're born with weaker constitutions, and they are sicker and sicker over time. So even changing now and regaining a better way of eating now for all of humanity will change future generations to come. That's how genetics changes, and that's how things change over time. So by changing what you eat now, in the long run, in the future, could change diabetes 1 in the future. So, but for a person now who is born with it, it's a little difficult because it's a constitutional issue.
And what about heart diseases? How can they be addressed with
heart disease actually is a lot easier because it's more of a conditional problem. I mean, some people are born with weak hearts and weak constitutionally, and they have to deal with that for their all their lives. But most heart disease and heart issues, they are conditional because of people are just eating too much animal food, too much dairy food, too much sugar, too much alcohol, all of these foods that are weakening their heart, and over time it's clogging their arteries and their veins and weakening themselves, and lifestyle of living in cities, you know, and not being outdoors, and all of that is creates a very weak heart. And so that can easily be reversed just by eating better and taking care of yourself and changing your lifestyle to improve your heart. It's not a big issue really. Yet people think it's a big issue because they don't want to change their food.
Perhaps. Rod, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think it's a very important issue, diabetes. Diabetes is not an isolated disease, like that. They have diabetes, no. Diabetes correlates with also mental problems. Actually, all degenerative diseases begin with diabetes, all of them. But diabetes is identified in the very advanced stage for specific symptoms, but there are many more symptoms that they don't identify as diabetes. So what is diabetes? My understanding of diabetes, looking at the total picture, and I'm using here the inductive mindset, when we understand ourselves as part of creation, right? Creation, it's like this. So the total cycle, creation, we link in by food. This food. Right? Becomes our blood, becomes our consciousness, and we return. So we have three systems. We have a digestive system that represents the descension, that we have a digestive system. We have a nervous system that correlates with the ascension. And the connection between heaven and earth, we call this vibration, energy. Yeah, the polarity, that is a circulation. Three systems, right? So this is health. Health means whole. Whole. Each cell of the body is in synchronicity with the corresponding star. That's health. Now, to maintain this, you need to have a total memory, and you need to have the memory released all the way here from the small intestines. And for the ascension, that memory is really, we call it remembering. Now, there are two types of food. One is a food for the descension, and it requires the water element. This is why we are conceived or developed